So how have you been?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, fine. Just being with the children and just staying at home, doing what we're meant to be doing, I suppose. And yeah,
Yeah,
just taking each day as it comes and not, yeah, that's all you can do, isn't it? Just,
totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know the last time we sort of loosely spoke, I think you were going to come in for a session with the team, and it all just kind of just didn't quite feel. It was a strange point, wasn't it? That sort of maybe 8 weeks ago now or so.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and all of a sudden we're here.
Yeah. And actually it's kind of crazy to think that it's been as long as that. I
I
in a
know.
way in a way it feels like now it's always been like this. But
Yeah.
also how has it been as long as that? Yeah. We because we were meant to go away for 7.5 weeks, and we were actually I got the notification on my calendar on Tuesday about my flight home, and I was like, oh my goodness, that's that whole trip.
Yeah.
There's like at first it was like, okay, well it's almost like we're a bit delayed going away, but now we're like we would have been back for 2 days having spent almost 2 months away.
I
It's
know.
crazy when you think, when you think of it like that. But I think you're right, it's like that day at a time. I always think of when I ran a marathon, which also feels like a lifetime ago. I don't know how I ever managed that, but I kept saying to myself that if I think about the whole distance, it
Mm.
feels impossible. But if you're just in like the very step that you're in right now, so like day at a time, or like one foot in front of another, like this step, then it becomes much more manageable. When you start to think like, oh my gosh, it's 8 weeks, or then it becomes quite overwhelming. um
Certainly. And I think, yeah, I think that's maybe how, you know, we've all had to. We're better if we manage things that I know I certainly am. If I can
mm,
just think about little snippets of things I've got to do, I'm much better for it. So yeah, I know you had that trip planned, and I was thinking about you, and yeah, but I hope that you get to plan it again.
well, that's what we say. We're like, at least we
Yeah,
can still look forward to it.
yeah.
Because something we've been looking forward to for 2 years,
Oh
we're
my
like, it's going to be weird when we've done it and then we don't have it to look forward to anymore.
God.
So
Very
now we're like, well, we
good.
could look forward to it for another 2 years.
Yeah, I know, and you have to see things like that way. Certainly, with how we work, lots of brides this year have had to postpone their weddings,
Mm,
which is such a 6 months ago we'd never even thought this was even something that could ever happen, and it's a really similar thing because it's something you're looking forward to, and it's an
totally.
event with other people, and yeah, so I'm with you on that, and I think you've just got to try and find the best way looking forward rather than thinking what could have happened, what was, yeah,
Totally.
just
Well, one of your
find a
one
way
of your
to
brides being one of my best friends, whose hen I was meant to be away for on the trip that was cancelled, and whose wedding I wasn't able to come to. So obviously, it's so sad that she's had to, it's really challenging to have to postpone it, but I
Mm.
can now go to her hen party and her wedding.
There
So
you go. There's always a silver lining, and I know that you were, when you were coming in and seeing us, you were very much like, oh, I've got to pick between. I've got 2 weddings and 2 commitments, and that's good. That's really good because I know
Yeah.
she'll be really, really happy. We've been
Yeah,
in chat
it's
to
really
her, and
it's really lovely. It's just a very small silver lining to a much bigger picture.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, Annie, tell us a little bit about what you have been doing during this time, and um, I suppose why I wanted to kind of chat with you is that every time we've met you, and we met you through making your lovely sister Ellie Clarke's wedding dress last year, and you were such a ray of sunshine when you came in for her, and for everybody else. So really, it was just kind of sharing what you're doing online, and it's such a positive thing for everyone, and just hearing a little bit more about that, really.
Of course. So, well, first and foremost, I'm a yoga teacher. And earlier this year, 1st of Jan, I launched an online yoga studio called The Practice, which in some ways feels like the most perfect timing, because it's there, and it's been something that I hope has been a really useful resource for people over the last couple of, well, weeks, months now. But on the other side,
I know.
every other yoga teacher is now online, which is
Okay.
amazing, and also has kept me on my toes a little bit. Yeah, so I've been really using this time to, so I feel very, firstly, I feel very grateful that we had that set up, because it meant that I could sort of step back without feeling the immense pressure that all of the retreats that I run, all of the kind of international teaching events that were booked in for the rest of the year, all of that has just been completely wiped. And having built a sort of a business around my teaching for the last 5, 6, 7 years, to suddenly feel like we're being sort of dropped back to square one again, there was kind of two ways of approaching it. I sort of sat for a moment, for a little while, and just thought, okay, let's just let this land, let's be in it.
Absolutely.
And really take the time to focus on rest, because I had the luxury of doing that. I don't have children. I was meant to be away, so I had no commitments, and I used the time to sort of dive into learning things that had sort of signed up to but hadn't done, and so I had that kind of few weeks where I just really invested in kind of resetting myself, and then finding a little bit of inspiration to then dive into some of the things that I have also had on the back burner that I haven't had time to do. And in the meantime, I've been taking kind of live classes online to try and support people during this time. I think it's, for some people who regularly go to classes and suddenly have had that kind of tool or that kind of retreat taken away from them, it's really important to make sure that they've had access to that. But in order to be able to support that, I kind of needed to make sure that I got the reset that I was going to get when I was away. So it's like most people, I think it's kind of been floating in this balance of kind of rest and action, and trying to take bits of both as and when. But a really interesting sort of thing at the start of all this was, I felt like there was a lot of conversations going around about what we should be using this time for, and people feeling quite guilty about not sort of making the most of it. And actually, I tried to really sort of step away from that and just be like, what feels right for me? Like, what does this time look like for me, rather than worrying about it being like the best opportunity for my online studio or the best opportunity to do this, and just kind of sit in it and exist in it and just be, which isn't always the easiest thing. Most of us are quite good at doing and not that good at being.
Absolutely. And I think, in a weird way, and I don't like to talk about it, well, I'm trying to talk about it in a positive light, because we have to see things that way, is it has given us time to pause. And I think right at the beginning of all of this, we were just sort of launched into this situation of having to manage multiple different things. And you're right, it has given us a chance to pause. And I really hope that people have taken that opportunity, and certainly, I have.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think with what you've been doing, certainly straight away, I felt, from looking in from, different perspective, you have given that opportunity for everyone to be like, right, come on, 8 o'clock, whatever, I'm doing a session, and it would be really nice if you could join me. And I think it's been such a nice thing to see, on social. I think it's a really positive thing to see, for sure.
And I think it's also just giving people options. I think there was this sort of overwhelm kind of 2 weeks into lockdown in the UK, where everyone had suddenly figured out sort of the tech of how to get online.
Yeah.
And suddenly there was just everything was there, whether that was fitness or yoga or learning or extra meetings or whatever it might be. And it was like,
Quizzes.
so yeah, so everyone was doing a pub quiz about 5 times a week. And just this kind of overwhelm of stuff, which I think is very similar to kind of life before, where we just have all of this stimulus being thrown at us and we feel a little bit paralyzed about what to do, and there's FOMO. But actually I think just allowing people to start to make choices about how they spend their time, and actually what I think is coming up at this time is that people are finding what is important to them and the sort of things that they need, some of which they're actually able to get more of while the world looks like this, and other things, you know, we've had to adapt and put, you know, we'll be looking forward to when we come out, like how good it feels to be with our friends and that kind of thing.
Certainly that pause point is good for everyone, and you know, something that I regularly do, because my life is so busy with multiple different things, children, business, you know, brides, friends, etc. You do need that time, and I think being forced or, you know, told that we have to do something has made people maybe reevaluate things. So yeah, it's given me a chance to do a bit more yoga, which is a positive thing for sure. Feeling a bit more flexible, which is always good.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Yeah, we really look forward to getting back to our, you know, our sort of, we were doing some team sessions, which is so nice. I know everyone got so much from them. You just, even though you'd start the day really relaxed, and you know, certainly your presence and just doing a bit of, you know, mindfulness practice and stretching, I know the girls have got so much from it, so I'm hoping we can start that back up soon.
Definitely, and it will feel even more special. And I do think that's what's so brilliant, Andrew, about how you you know, the business and the sort of family that you've created in what you do, is that it really does come from a place of kind of care and nurturing, and it's, I think that
I hope so.
yeah, it really does, it really does. I think that's probably why we found it so easy to connect.
Good. Well, yeah, I think, you know, certainly at the moment we're trying to look after our brides the best way possible, and it feels impossible sometimes at the moment, because we're in a time where we don't really know what's going to happen next. So, and it's not what we used to do, and we're used to always being there for our brides so much. So it's been really tough, but I think we will get through it and be stronger for it in some, you know, I think all our brides that have had to postpone, they're gonna get to a better place. Probably next year is going to be extremely busy for everyone.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be a good thing. It's going to be the year of the wedding.
Yeah, wedding season next year is looking even busier than usual.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're definitely preparing ourselves for that side of things. You know, and just trying to support our brides in the best possible way, encouraging them to do good things, such as yoga. And I know that I've benefited so much from it with my small, you know, average practice. I try my best.
Don't downplay it.
No, but I do know that if you persevere and you just, it doesn't matter how big or small. And you know, there are days where I literally have probably about 7 minutes of practice, and I think to myself, oh, I'm not doing it as well as I should do. And again, it's being hard on yourself, and you shouldn't do that. But I found that over time, even just having those little snippets of the day actually has built up and has been super beneficial. So it is all about small things.
It really is.
And not trying to be perfect. And I suppose I'm just sort of bringing that to our, you know, to our brides at this time, and to anyone, that we can do small things right now, and make ourselves feel really, really good.
And I completely agree. And I'm a firm, I mean, my studio is called The Practice. The idea being that it isn't about being perfect. It's just about cultivating a connection to the practices and the tools that support us best. And that looks different for everybody, but I really encourage kind of consistency over, you know, it's about the sort of commitment rather than if you can commit to 7 minutes a day, then actually the chances are that's probably much more powerful than an hour-long class every couple of weeks. I think, you know, just those small regular things, because in a moment of need, and there's a really beautiful quote by a writer called Young Pueblo, which I've been drawing on a lot at the moment.
Did you post it the other day?
I did, yeah.
I love it. I saved it on my phone.
Yeah, it's such a good one, and it's about finding kind of clarity within us when there's in times of turbulence. And I think you don't find that by being like, it's really stressful, I need to do some yoga, because actually a lot of the times
pressure on yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so actually having the tools to that as a regular thing, it's like anything that we do
when you can, how you want to, because we're all creatures of, you know, oh, do I have to, you know, I'm not a gym person, discovered that. I've got to the point of life where that's fine. But I know what works for me, and, you know, what makes me happy and what keeps me in a really good place is to just do little snippets of things that build up. And I think the way the practice works is that you can access, I suppose, when it feels right for you, and what sort of practice maybe you want to do. You've got sort of different sorts of practices.
Yeah, we need different things at different times, and again, it's like, okay, well, this is my toolbox, I'm going to take this now, and I'm going to take this now, and actually today this is better than this. And actually using gym is a really perfect kind of example of this. Like, some people really feel like they need that kind of high energy sort of fitness to support them physically, mentally. But there are some days where actually, for whatever reason, we might just need something that's a little bit more kind of grounding. And actually there's a place for both for a lot of people. And so it's just kind of reminding us that we have all of these different things to choose from. Just take a couple of things that tend to work for you, find a sense of kind of commitment to those if you can, in whatever that looks like for you. And just it's not a one size fits all. And in the same way, it's like having a few different things that support you, I think can be really, really powerful. Andrea, I've just, we were just saying about how terrible we are at tech. I've just noticed that my laptop's about to run out of battery, but my charger is right here.
Okay,
1 second.
That's fine. That's normally what I do, Annie.
I know it's a bit of a miracle that that I can do anything online, to be honest. But
you've got a whiz helper though, right?
Yeah, he does definitely ups the average of our tech ability.
Thanks.
There you go.
Really helpful.
Really helpful.
So, you were going to do your retreat, which I would have loved to come on if I didn't have two very, very small children. I'd be there in Bali. What are you thinking about retreats moving forwards? Have you got any thoughts on how? Well, it's difficult, isn't it?
It's really difficult. Yeah, it is really difficult. It's a good question, because it's been such a fundamental part of what I do for quite a long time now, just in terms of kind of my energy, and also the sort of day-to-day admin of planning and hosting and running retreats. And I usually do a few a year, and so but most of the time you're in some sort of planning or booking stage of one or more. And I have decided for the time being to cancel all retreats for the rest of the year. Not to say that there won't be any at the end of the year, but it seemed like a pretty crazy time to try and encourage people to book a retreat in September when we have no idea what's going on, and actually the admin of undoing and cancelling and stuff, it just didn't feel like the right sort of time or energy. So I've been thinking a lot about what that looks like. One of the big things for me with retreats, and it's definitely shifted the way in which I plan them over the last sort of couple of years, is the environmental side of things. So I now do one long haul from the UK, one long haul retreat a year rather than more than that. Actually, because often the guests aren't traveling from the UK, and that's sort of closer to them.
Okay.
But it's definitely, so that's kind of one thing that I was doing before, I sort of reduced the long haul element to try and just be a little bit more conscious in terms of air travel. But this has kind of opened up the thought process a little bit more about what that looks like, and you know, whether the retreat that I was hosting in Bali, which we had to cancel literally the day before I was flying out, or rather postpone. It's postponed indefinitely until we've got some clarity over the next couple of months. But it's been a really interesting process, because I think what happens is that when something doesn't go to plan, the default for lots of us is to try and fix and come up with a solution. And actually what I've had to do, which especially running a business on my own, has been quite challenging at times, and especially when you care about something, you're really emotionally invested in something, but is to sort of sit back without trying to fix it and come up with sort of a short-term plan, which is just to make sure that everyone that was expecting to come is okay and supported.
Really
and
similar
then
to us in a way, you know.
very similar, yeah. But and then have let go of the idea of a long-term plan, because actually right now there's so much unknown. So I'm kind of looking at the idea of doing some online retreats and trying to find a way to kind of there are so many elements of being on a physical retreat that are so special, and finding how to let some of them, how to translate those best, but also let go of some of them as well. Because I think the challenge every time I start to plan something online is the comparison of like, well, it won't be the same as this. And so I'm trying to look at new ways to build experiences, like immersive experiences, that can be really powerful in their own right, rather than trying to take the same experience and put it online when actually it will always be different. So over the next, I mean, it's challenging, and I'm trying to be really comfortable, or sometimes quite uncomfortable, with not knowing exactly what it looks like, and being really open to being out of control.
Yeah, absolutely. And really tough one, isn't it? But I suppose if you do let yourself go a little bit, you can relax enough to get those good thoughts going. Because I know I'm always better if I'm in a relaxed state, and I can design better, and ideas will come to me because I'm feeling good.
Totally.
So certainly, yeah. And I know you, Annie, you'll find a really good way of creating a great retreat for people. I think it's going to be amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, do you know what? And actually, when you said what have I been doing with this time, I think those first few weeks of just like letting go of the need to fix and just being was so fundamental to then building some, like finding some creativity again. And actually, like you said, then the thoughts come in and you think, wait, this could be an interesting approach or something new. And if you're doing that I know for me, if I'm doing that in a stressful place, it doesn't really come. But I feel incredibly grateful for the practices that I had before, because I do think they've supported me in finding a very deep sense of peace in this situation. And that's not to overlook the enormous, human impact of this, and economic impact, and personal impact for everybody. But I have been able to find a sense of peace and sort of surrender control much more easily. And I think maybe a realization that I just don't really have another choice, so I might as well just be.
Yeah, be, exactly. And yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it, just to kind of let go. And that's certainly what you do really well. So yeah, I suppose it sort of links into, like, you know, a lot of our brides and their hen dos as well, and, you know, all those sorts of trips. And you know, certainly I've been thinking before we spoke that I think people are going to look at more what's going on in this country, and maybe doing things virtually together, and also having that time to reflect on maybe looking after themselves and a bit of wellness in that sense. So maybe people will start to introduce techniques like yoga into hen dos. I'm imagining sort of people getting together, doing more kind of positive, kind of, you know, activities together, finding different ways of being together, I think is certainly something I'm feeling from our brides.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, I think that was sort of trickling in certain places. And I've done a few sort of Hindus or Hindu retreats or that kind of thing. But actually since, oh, my neighbours have just started knocking. Let me know if it's annoying. But it's definitely, particularly at the moment, where there are a lot of brides whose Hindus were kind of over this time. They've been looking, or their bridal party or whoever have been looking at ways that they can still market, but in a way that feels positive. And so yeah, I definitely think those two things that you said, like finding stuff more at home or, you know, locally, to relieve a lot of pressure, because there is this crazy world around Hindus where there's, you know, they're expensive and they're a big commitment, and they're the most beautiful celebrations, but sometimes they can come with a lot of pressure for the bride and for guests as well. And so I think I do think there is a shift at the moment, and we mentioned this a moment ago about sort of being a little bit more aware of what serves us and what doesn't. And I hope that people feel a little bit more empowered to choose things that serve them better, and whether that's kind of being selective about what they say yes to, or saying
you talk about that a lot, which is, I know, that lovely reminder to me whenever I see your post or you mention something, but that thing of saying you can say no, you can you know, say yes to what makes you feel good. Absolutely.
And I think that there's, like, you know, there's a place for both. Like, celebration can be, you know, we can choose the healthier options without compromising on fun as well. I think there's you know, there's options for both. And I think that what I hope comes from this time is that people are more aware of the sort of things that make them feel good. And for a lot of people, that's going to be a bit more of a combination of different things. So it will be really interesting to see how that translates to things like Hindus, because it's a big part of our culture, and a really exciting thing for brides. And I hope that, you know, even brides will feel empowered to tell their bridesmaids, or, you know, whoever's organising, be like, actually, I'd like a bit more of this and a bit less of this, and this is what would serve me really well. This is how I want to celebrate.
Exactly, because that lead up, you know, and thinking now about all those weddings that are going to happen over, you know, hopefully the next year or so, we're going to come out of this time and feel like maybe I've paused and I've, you know, hopefully taken something really good from this. And how do I want to introduce all those things into my lifestyle before my wedding? And I know that a lot of brides, all of a sudden they're engaged, they're getting married, and you know this through your sister's wedding, and you know the sort of planning of that, you start to really think about yourself, I think, a lot more. It's like a point of life where you think, oh, I'm all eyes are on me, and how do I want to feel on my wedding day? And certainly looking after yourself in many different ways is a really positive thing, and we try and encourage that as much to our brides. But yeah, I think.
Well, and also with that as in a holistic sense, because I
Yeah,
think a lot of people will relate that to like brides wanting to feel like they look their best
exactly. Yeah,
physically.
and that's
And
not what we're. Yeah,
yeah, and actually what you're so brilliant at supporting and encouraging and really, really advocating is this kind of like holistic approach that, like, yes, it can be stressful, but it's also should be the most sort of treasured, can be, rather not should, but can be the most treasured experience, where you really if you're feeling good, not just physically but mentally as well, then actually the experience could be so wonderful.
yeah.
Why not give
You
that a
are
shot?
going to feel the best version of yourself, which
Exactly.
is something I say all the time. We want you to feel the absolute best version of yourself, and that can be in many different forms. And it's how you feel and what makes you feel good, how you want to look, be. Exactly, it's everything. So yeah, this is why we love you, Annie, because you kind of bring a bit of that, and we wanted to share that with our brides, certainly. And so yeah.
Well, I know that my I can only speak from our experience, but I know that definitely helped to support my sister through her process. Is that kind of working with a team really, really wanted that for her.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone is very just wanting to make. I've always wanted to have a team where it feels like everyone's really happy, and we want the best for our brides, and I think that definitely comes through.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah. Thank you, Annie. You've been amazing. It's been really nice to chat with
it's
you.
so nice to see you.
Yeah, I know. I've been sort of watching you and seeing your lovely, your yoga sessions, but to kind of have that chat, and I'm missing it in so many ways.
Yeah, me too.
But it's been really good to chat. Great to hear more about the practice as well. I'm hoping that's going really, really well.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's just been a lovely light in my day, being able to catch up.
Good. Well, I really hope that you have a lovely day. What are you doing today? You just it's your sort of breathing day?
Yeah, Thursdays I try to maintain, because I did this pre-lockdown, is that I try to give myself Thursdays at least without too many time commitments, so that even if I'm working, I'm not under too much pressure. But I'm not sure when you're going to be sharing this, but tomorrow is the Friday bank holiday. And so class I normally teach on Friday is going to be tonight instead. So I'm just going to do some admin, teach a class, and then make some delicious dinner, like most days in lockdown.
We've got to make most of it and do everything that feels really good to us. So
exactly.
Brilliant.
Oh, we're sending you lots of love.
Will do. Thank you. You too. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.